Hello. Welcome to another Calm Business Conversation. I am Kerstin Martin. I am a Squarespace and Calm Business educator. So what does this mean, Calm Business? Calm Business is, in a way, the antidote to hustle culture. I've been running an online business for more than 8 years. And as we all know, those of us who move in the online space, the hustle is everywhere. And I have never liked it. I much prefer to do things calmly. And this is really what has evolved out of this. So a couple of years ago, I created what I call the Calm Business Review, helping business owners to calmly take stock of their business and, to look at what they're doing, to get organized. And, running a calm business is very much about how we run the business, so to stay organized, to simplify our tech. I mean, we have so much technology these days. It's so easy to get overwhelmed, and that is partly what this is about. It's about, reducing the overwhelm and running our businesses with more joy and ease. But that is only one part of it. The other part is almost spiritual, if you want, or emotional. And it's very much about running our businesses in alignment with who we are. I mean, there is no one fit all way of doing things. Yet this is often the world we have grown up in. We've gone to school where we're kind of, put into those boxes, and we all sit the same exams and all of that, but I think nowadays, more than ever, we recognize we're all very individual, and sure, there are common ways of doing things. But I also feel it's very important that we can work in a way that is aligned with our energy, with who we are. And that is really, how this calm business philosophy, if you want, is evolving. So my guest today is Christianne Squires. Now, Christianne and I, we've known each other for quite a few years. I think we met in someone else's group. I think Susanna is how we met, right?
Inside story.
And so Christianne has a thing called, the speed of soul. And that has resonated with me ever since you first mentioned it online. And so today I really wanted to talk to you more about that, but also more about what you do. I mean, Christianne does wonderful work in this world, and it's all about, discernment and humanity. And I really feel we are recording this in April 2023. And there has been a lot of talk about AI. I mean, it's just exploded now in our world over the last couple of months, with ChatGPT and all of that. It's been around for a long time, of course, AI, but now it's become accessible in the mainstream. And I think what many of us are worried about is, well, AI is a machine. Let us never, ever forget that. Even if we talk to AI, it's a machine, it can sound human because that's what we program it to do, but it is a machine. And on one hand, you have people who are like all over it, who think, oh, this is great. This is going to make me work even faster and more efficiently. And all of that, I'm going to get so much done now in less time. But also, on the other hand, you have the people who are really concerned about our humanity in all of this. Is AI basically going to take over our planet? At this point, we don't know. We really don't know where this is going to go. Even the experts and the people who develop it, they don't know either. It's kind of like the genie is out of the bottle, and nobody can put it back in. And we're going to have to find a way to actually coexist with artificial intelligence. But that, to me, makes actually today's conversation even more important, because it's going to be very focused on our humanity. So, with all of this said, Christianne, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what you do?
All right. Thank you so much for inviting me into this conversation, Kerstin. When you first started talking about calm business, I felt an immediate sense of connection to that. And it was interesting to hear you talk just now about how we do our businesses in alignment and with ease with who we are, because it just made me think, oh, that's very similar to what I'm doing with the Lighthouse, which is my business is called the Lighthouse. The way I like to share about it with folks is to say, have you ever had an experience where you felt like what you were growing into, particularly in the area of spirituality and the way that you connect to whatever you might name as God or the divine in the world, the universe, has grown beyond maybe what you had when you were growing up, kind of some of the spiritual or even religious roots that you had that you were given that fit you for a time, but you come to a place in your life where you start to evolve and you start to grow and broaden your views, maybe learn other things, learn other perspectives, approaches to life, and you start to feel like what you understand about spirituality and about who we are and our connectivity to one another and to the world is larger and maybe more mysterious than what we were maybe given when we started. And so I serve a community of women. We call ourselves contemplative women. Contemplative spirituality has centuries of roots to it in all the different religious traditions. And it tends to be kind of the edges of religious institutions and even outside of religious institutions that are more mystical and more broad and more like everything is connected. It's less dogmatic. It's less like structured and rule-based. It's much more open and flowing. And so what I love about what you're saying about calm business and doing our business in a way that aligns with who we are, the women that I serve are very much looking for, how can I live every day aligned with who I am in the world? Not just necessarily if I have a business, but how do I move through this world with the ease and the alignment and the discernment and the spirituality and connection, in a way that feels true to like what I deeply believe is the reality of all things. So those are some big words. We're an online community and we have different groups and things and gatherings and threads and things that we do together that help us stay connected to our deep values around that.
Okay, well, tell us just very briefly, actually, because you just launched the Sophia Circles and what was the other one again?
Examine groups.
The Examine groups. Tell us a little bit more about that, because I know you had a 1-year program, but you're also experimenting a little bit now. With having shorter programs.
Yes. So the way that it used to be is people could just join straight into the community and start to get to know our different rhythms and ways of doing things and join different things that we have going on. And what I've learned for several years now is that we have certain groups in the community that are really powerful for people. They're transformational in the sense of relationship and connection to self, relationship with others and connection to self, and also staying tuned into what you're trying to move forward in your life. And so our Sophia Circles are groups for people who have a project. It might be a small business, it might be a book, it might be some kind of a passion project or a creative project, or maybe something that they want to launch, like a volunteer initiative in their community. And they need a space to focus on that and stay connected to moving it forward, but also wanting to continue to stay aligned in their discernment about how they're doing that, what they're being invited to do, all the questions that come up when you start to do anything. If you have a book, there's so many questions to figure out. Am I going to publish, self-publish or traditional publish? Am I really being invited to bring a book into the world? Who's my audience? Small business, same thing. And so the Sophia Circles are 3-month groups for folks who have something like that, and they want to move it forward for 3 months in an intentional way and stay aligned with the truth, like the true sense of what's theirs to do and how to do it. And then the other group they're called Examine groups, and they are a little bit less structured. They're more about a touch point every week for you to notice your life. So we do this practice called an Examine, which basically is a way of looking back at the last week and looking forward to the coming week and saying, what are we noticing? What's the invitations that we're tending? How are we being invited to keep living in our life right now? And so it's a place to notice that and then share around that. So we have these 2 different group offerings, and I just brought them outside the community for the first time and said, if you want to be a part of one of these, this will be a starting point for the community. And afterwards, you can kind of come into our fuller life together.
Oh, so I love all of that. There is actually so much goodness in there. I'm trying, like in my head, I'm like, okay, you've mentioned quite a few words now, discernment, invitation. And, it's really about living with intention as well, and because like calm business is very much about having an intentional business. And I actually love that you're bringing this into these containers. 3 months is kind of doable. I feel nowadays it's really difficult for many of us to keep our attention up, right? And we have such short attention spans, and the internet and social media has really made it hard for us to focus. And so while I think a year-long program is absolutely wonderful, and also it's all about community, of course, and making friends and connections, but having these like 3 months containers, I feel is actually very helpful, because it can help people to focus, but also to learn, how what we've just said, how to do things in a way that is aligned. And you mentioned, for instance, invitation, and that brings another thing into this for me, which is human design. I've been dabbling with human design, and for my type, I'm a projector, which might not mean anything to anyone, but I have to be invited, for instance, to do things, so which is why I don't like hustle culture. To me, when I read that, I thought, wow, now it makes total sense why I cannot be a hustler, because I cannot go out there and constantly bombard people with stuff or ask for things and all of that. No, I basically just have to sit back, do my thing, put my things out into the world, and then I have to wait to be invited. And learning that was like really life-changing, actually, because it's almost like, well, I just need to be the lighthouse, basically. So I don't need to go out and do things and all this. I just need to be here and shine and, do my thing. And then those people, who this speaks to, they will then invite me in to share this with them, and then I can help them. So that is just like one way of how we, can recognize how we best work. What I really love also about your Sophia Circle is that you're taking something very tangible and practical, like there's a project, there's something that we want to move along. And then you're applying the spiritual and intentional
the values
to that. Let's talk a little bit more about spirituality, because when we first talked about this, when we had our pre-conversation, I mentioned, so I grew up very differently. I didn't grow up in America, where I often feel like people are so much more religious over here, and you have all these different, religious groups. And I have met quite a few people over here who have grown up in very strict, religious containers and or spiritual containers. I did not have that at all. I mean, I grew up in Germany, where we only have Catholic and Protestant, and I am a Protestant. I actually went to a Catholic convent school, of all things. I don't know why my mom actually let me go there, because my mom was completely not religious at all. We never went to church or anything. But I was kind of fascinated by it, and I did actually go and attend mass, but I was, for instance, not allowed to, take communion and all that. But I've always felt kind of detached from it all. I've always wanted to be religious, but I don't know, just something just wasn't there, I just didn't feel that. But when we talked about it, we kind of, talk more about spirituality, and because I'm not an atheist, but I'm probably more like agnostic. So I'm saying, well, there could be something out there, and maybe there is something out there. And so tell us a little bit more about this, because, because your group or your community is not just about, not just for religious people,
it's
right?
Not. Yeah. I mean, there's certainly people in there that do identify with a particular religious faith tradition, but the kind of the ethos of our community is very open to however you understand your connection to the wider world and to whatever might be going, some greater being or reality.
The universe, right?
The universe. Yeah. And so there's lots of different ways we might have names for it and ways we might connect to it. And this is where actually, I know we've brought up the word discernment a couple times and haven't really gotten into what that means, but my approach to discernment in the work that I do is helping people find their way of discerning. Discernment goes beyond just making a decision about something. It's about tuning into what is your invitation in this particular moment with this particular thing. And that involves tuning into like, what is the inner wisdom inside of you saying? And if you believe in some kind of outer or inner being that is beyond us, also tuning into what that connection has to say to you. And so I think that's where there's such an ethos in our community around honoring what people are discerning is right for them. And so this is why it so connects to your calm business thing, because it's like, what is right for you? What is your inner voice or inner wisdom calling you to do or inviting you toward, and honoring that. And then having a whole community of people that are doing the same thing, living that same way, and honoring that in one another. So yeah, for me, it's not about a religious path. It's more about a spiritual connection, however you name that, however you experience that. And I experience you to be a very spiritual person, Kerstin. I know you do you like to do the cards, pulling cards and kind of letting those help, you think and kind of interpret what direction you might want to go. And I don't know, I experience you as someone who listens deeply to what is happening on the inside and how that might want to guide you. That to me is very spiritual.
Yeah. And I actually really appreciate, you saying that, and I think you're probably right. And I can certainly think also of, times and situations in my life when, for instance, I've kind of felt really lost. And then just one day I just made the decision, okay, I'm just gonna let go. I'm going to let go of any expectations, of any constraints. And I'm just going to see what the universe has in store for me. I'm just going to trust the universe to guide me, through this difficult time. And it was almost like a spiritual moment that I had then, and it really, and I remember, that suddenly then things started to flow and get unstuck and but it's not something that I think comes natural to many of us. I feel like when we grow up in a, like a religious setting, then it's kind of forced from the outside a lot.
It is. Right.
But when we allow actually for it to just come from the inside, and it's hard to explain actually, and
it is.
But it certainly is something that a few times in my life, I have actually experienced. And I feel like one component that I also come to a lot of times, so discernment, I really like how you just explained that. It's actually one of my favorite words, and in the English language. And to me, what's closely connected to that is attention. And I feel like attention, not just intention, but actually giving attention to something. So I remember, like many years ago, I worked I was a manager of a small hotel, and just a small 22-room boutique hotel. It was not an easy job, It was, all-consuming basically. And I had a boss she was a total type A. I'm more like a type B kind of person. And but she was tough, but she was fair. She was actually really, really good boss, and she was the owner of the business, of course. And I remember I was dealing with some staffing issues. I hated dealing with staffing issues, because I don't like confrontation and all those things. Mm-hmm. And so she came into my office, and we had another problem that we had to deal with. And I distinctly remember that out of nowhere, it's almost like a voice just said, okay, Kerstin, just pay attention. Just pay attention. And so I kind of sat up straighter, looked her in the eyes, listened to her deeply and engaged. And it's like, and just paid attention to the moment, to the matter at hand. And I tell you, my whole day was amazing. I was almost like on a high, it was almost like I'd taken something and now I was on this high. And it just came from this like voice. I don't even know how to describe it. But just something that told me, just pay attention. Of course, eventually I lost it again,
Yeah, right. Then it's like the intention to continue to pay attention.
Yeah, exactly.
has to come. And so that's amazing. That's a beautiful story. That feels like a very spiritual experience. And I also want to say about the other story you said about that feeling of like, I think I need to let go. And then there would be a flow that happened. To me, as someone who works with people in discernment, I would say, okay, that is a marker for you, that there is something about realizing you need to let go and trust the flow to come and things to start to happen, that's part of your unique discernment way. Like that when you find yourself maybe in a place of tightness or like trying to grasp or put, that you have a touchstone to say, no, actually what I need to do is let go because things will start to come together. That's not like a unique signature of your way of discernment, is one part of it. I think I would say if you have had that happen multiple times, I have goosebumps, but I feel like that's one way that you and the universe communicate with each other, if that makes sense. I don't know how that lands for you, but in the approach that I take with my work, that is what I would encourage someone to consider. As part of their discernment.
No, I love that, and I actually, and I guess maybe that was also my next question, because I feel like these moments that I've had, like these spiritual moments, but they were always kind of fleeting. So in your experience, I mean, is this something that we can practice and therefore experience more of?
I believe so. And I think we have multiple ways in. Like one of the things I realized when I started teaching discernment to groups of people, I created some processes. And one of the things I have us do is make a list of all the decision moments in our life. And then to notice, what did our yes feel like? What did our no feel like? What did our I don't know feel like? And start to notice patterns. And what I realized for me is that when I knew something was the right thing for me, it took a lot of like, oh, I don't know for like a long time. And then suddenly something very small would happen and everything would click into place. And I would be like, oh. And so whenever I now find myself in a place of like, oh, I don't know, I know that I can trust that and say, oh, this is part of the process. And eventually something small will happen to make it click. And I just can trust that because that's how it works for me. I have seen the pattern in my life. And so I think it's something that we can use as touchstones for ourselves and trust it.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Can I add one more? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, of course. No, go on.
I just wanted to add one other piece because we're talking so much about spirituality that I think there's another side of the contemplative community that I run and that the way of being in the world that is not just spiritual, but also just like you use the word attention. When you think about the word contemplate or contemplative, like it is like, I'm really thinking about something. I'm really bringing my attention to, I'm really paying attention. And so I think that's another aspect of the community that I lead, that we want to live as people who are contemplating things, like we're thinking about them, we're paying attention, we're very present when we're talking with someone, and so it's because we're taking time to really hold and consider what's happening or what we're noticing. There's a practice of presence. And so I guess I just want to add that other connection point.
Yeah, no, and I love that actually, a practice of presence, and also, contemplative. I know you've been asking on Instagram, what does it mean to you, to be contemplative? Yeah. And it's been really fascinating. And I feel, that actually nowadays, I really so strongly feel that like the kind of work you do and maybe also what I do with Calm Business is so important, because we live at a time where attention spans have, diminished so much, and also where we don't really talk with each other anymore. We don't, listen. We don't, you just see all this, like where people just shout at each other, and there are no dialogues anymore. And we have, the internet for all the wonderful things that I think the internet has brought, it has created all these silos and echo chambers. And so people don't really step outside of themselves or their own experiences anymore and actually look at their fellow human beings and their experiences and really listen and pay attention and discern and, or enter into a dialogue, because obviously we are not all the same and we will not always have the same opinion. but there still is something beyond just ourselves. There is a community out there, and I deeply believe as human beings, we need community. And to make community work, we have to engage and talk with each other. We have to also enter into dialogue. That's like another one of my things that I feel very passionate about is dialogue, because I see so little of it these days. We won't mention certain politicians in this country, because and what they have created, by not ever listening and just it's kind of heartbreaking, actually, and all of these things, where it actually gives me a lot of hope, though, that people like you are out there as well, who create these communities where we foster, community and engagement and dialogue and true listening.
Yeah, I think what I love about the contemplative way of being is it's both a pausing to pay attention and notice our own life, because I think, like you were talking about, internet culture, as for all the good things it has, it keeps us very distracted and kind of out of touch with ourselves. We can just scroll forever and like never pay attention to what's going on in here, pay attention to our life. And so it's a pausing to notice your own life, but it's also a way of being in presence with other people. So these groups, like the Examine group, it's like you get to pay attention to your own life. And that's a gift when you maybe normally wouldn't work that into your weekly rhythms, but also a chance to practice being present to other people and what they're sharing of what's happening for them and noticing things. It's such a practice of presence, like we were saying. And so I feel like these small groups are transformative to to what our world needs, I believe. And I would love to have more people doing it, because it just could multiply. So
no, I mean, absolutely. And I actually feel kind of excited about it. I kind of feel, there's actually hope for us, because we have places like that, and so let us, talk about speed of soul. That kind of encompasses a lot of what we just talked about. But how did you come up with that term even?
Yeah. So, okay, this was in November of 2019. So it's been 3.5 years. I went to a retreat for like a week, and I was in New Hampshire in the woods. It was beautiful, like fall, leaves had all fallen. And it was just this quiet week. And I came home and I was getting caught up on my email and caught up on Instagram and caught up on what was happening in the world. And I just was so bombarded. It was like my nerve endings were like frayed, and it was just a moment. We've all had them where we've had some time apart and then you try to re-enter and you're like, whoa. And I just had this moment of clarity where I'm not designed to live at that speed of the world. Like, it's way too fast. It's way too loud. I need to move at the speed of my soul. What is that rhythm inside of me? And so I wrote about that on Instagram, the speed of soul. And it just really felt like what's that word? Like it rung like a tuning fork for many people. And so, I've been growing a lot in my understanding of speed of soul, because I think, given how I'm wired, my speed is like, the pace.
Tell us about what happened with what you were doing.
Yeah. So I was like, how would I tune into my inner speed? And I kind of was like, I think it's like this, and then I was like, no, it's even slower than that. And so I think just try to even tune our inner ear to like, what is the beat of our inner speed? And then how can we honor that? And it gets challenging when you're in community, particularly like family life, where you have people who have maybe different speeds of soul. How do you really honor one another's true speed and pace? But one thing I've been learning about speed of soul recently is that speed of soul doesn't mean slow. It means slow for me. Yeah. But for some, their natural speed is a little bit more energetic than mine. So it's really ultimately about honoring the humanity of each person's truth. And so that's where, we get into the AI and like the machine, and the hustle culture. It's like these things don't honor the dignity and the humanity of each individual person. So speed of soul is very much about what is your pace and how can you honor that? Yeah. And it's not easy, but I feel so important to our own dignity and our humanity.
I mean, I feel it's partly probably not easy because those of us who like to move a bit more slowly, we regularly get overrun by those whose natural cadence is faster, which I feel is probably more people than not, at least it certainly feels like that. And what it also reminds me of, because I've also spent a lot of time with what I call energy management, and it's something that partly comes also again from human design, and because they talk a lot about our energy and how we give and receive energy, how we build it up, how it's depleted. And that again is very much about knowing, who you are, and knowing, what your own speed is really, because the speed is all about our energy and preserving our energy. And and I'm definitely my speed of soul is pretty slow too. And
I think we would walk well together.
I think so. And but at the same time, it's also because of the world we live in. It's not always easy, to honor that and to really allow, to walk at our own speed, because then you get this whole, oh, I'm missing out, or I'm gonna have to catch up, or have to catch up, or I have to do what all these other people are doing because they're successful at what they're doing, so that's how I need to do it.
It must be the way to do it. I think I'm thinking a lot about relationships with where this is concerned, because I think the culture we live in also very much pushes like there's only one right way for anything, and it should look this way. And I think that really infiltrates into our thoughts about relationships. Like, if you're not doing it the way I want to do it, then you're wrong, or I'm wrong if I'm not doing it the way you want to do it. And so, like, what would it be like if our world was more postured toward like, what do you need? And here's what I need. And how can we both get our needs met?
Which comes back to dialogue, right?
Yes.
It comes back to dialogue and to talking, to listening, and to understanding also other people. Absolutely, because we don't live in a vacuum. And and we all have different speeds of soul, and so recognizing that and honoring that and knowing that about each other, I think that could just be so changing for us as a culture as well.
If we so many forces that we don't even realize are kind of affecting the way we relate to one another and to ourselves. And it's really my highest value in my own life is dignity, the dignity of myself, but honoring the dignity of other people. And so, if we try to push people into something different than what they are, or shame them into it, it's just violent. Yes. It's so wrong. So
I know, shame them and or make them scared or anxious, or I mean, that's all hustle culture, right? Hustle culture is all about the negative, and the definitely shaming as well, and like, oh, and it's just my way and my secret, and all of those things. It's and it's so loud, it's so noisy, it's so overwhelming, and yet it is kind of the world we live in. But that's why I feel that communities like the one you have, or the Calm Business movement is really important, because we kind of need that counterbalance.
We do.
And like you just said, with the whole AI thing, I think our biggest challenge, over the next few decades, centuries maybe, is going to be to retain our humanity. And, we're going to have to learn to coexist with those machines. I mean, we already do in many ways, with our computers, right?
Yeah, that's true. I guess so. Because I was like, I wonder what that's going to look like. Oh, I guess you're right. We already are doing it. We have our phones with us everywhere.
I want to actually share something that I've been doing that's actually been really interesting in this respect. Because it's again about practicing presence, and and our relationship to the machines, and to our computers and our phones. And I'm like many people. I just get scrolling. I mean, my phone is virtually attached to my hand. I even have a little loop, so I can just walk around like this. It's become like my third hand. Yeah. Yeah. And but I also notice, like when I work a lot, when I'm on my computer a lot, and then in the evening I'm on my phone a lot, it does something to my head. I really think, I mean, maybe there's something to the matrix, that it sucks all our energy out of us, I don't know. But I really feel like, that's what a lot of us do. And, people talk about the blue light and all that, but generally, I don't sleep well when I spend too much time on my screens. Mm-hmm. So someone told me, like, when you have a day where you're sitting on your computer a lot, take a break every 30 minutes. And not just like a little break to get a glass of water, but 5 minutes. Take a 5-minute break and, move, walk or do something. Go into your yard if you have one. I've been walking around the house. My husband has actually said, "Oh, there's the ghost again," because I just take a walk around the house. Now, it's disruptive because every 30 minutes, I mean, that when you're working on something, that can be disruptive. But what I have noticed is during those 5 minutes, especially like when I walk around or if I go outside, I notice my environment. It's like, oh, I really love my house. Oh, I really appreciate this corner of my house. It's like I get this like physical connection to my physical environment kind of back for just 5 minutes. Mm. And it really makes a difference to my day. Now, again, I don't know if I'll be able to do this all the time because it can also be a bit disruptive. But I think what this has taught me is that I do need to take more breaks. Absolutely. And spend time, literally with our physical things and hug my husband and just, connect with that. And so I don't know. So I just wanted to kind of share that, because
what it makes me think of is, I mean, we've been talking about AI and technology and the machine part of things, and I feel like what you're describing is like you're remembering that you're an embodied being. Yes. You're walking, you're seeing, you're connecting with your physical, you're hugging, and you're drinking water, So that, again, it comes back to that humanity, but it's not just the humanity of what's in our mind or in our heart, and that we might connect with people in real, like ourselves rather than a machine doing it, but it's the physical body embodiment part too.
Yeah. I love that. I love how you put that. That's exactly what it is.
Well, and I love that you offered that tip of taking that 5-minute break, and I feel like that's a really practical thing we can all do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been doing it for a few weeks now. And, so, I mean, like I say, not like all the time, but when I set my timer actually on my watch, and and sometimes I'll say, okay, I'm too deep into what I'm doing. And then I'll just set it again for another half hour and then I'll do it then, but it's actually, it's one of those little things, it's been quite, life-changing as well in a way. And
what I love about it too, I'll just add this as maybe a little postscript on this. In the community that I lead, we have this phrase called "notice what you notice," and it's a way to it's that pausing to be reflective, to be contemplative. And so I love when you were sharing that experience, and you said, "Here's what I've noticed. I've noticed my days are better when I do it. I've noticed that I feel more connected to my physical," and I'm just like, oh, you're being contemplative. No, you didn't even know it.
Oh,
but you noticed.
I love that. I'm going to have to check out your community actually. And, because it really sounds like an amazing place, and, so tell us, what is there anything, I know you've just launched, the 2 circles and the shorter 3 months, but if there is there anything else that you're thinking of doing for this year, or what's
I think what I'm looking forward to
for the lighthouse?
Over the next couple months, I'm looking forward to exploring some maybe like hour-long sessions where we can talk about some of these things that you and I are talking about. I have this idea for 3 reasons why it's hard for contemplatives to find community, and then 6 ways that the contemplative way can help heal the world. And so I'm like, I feel like these two ideas, I want to do some sessions, like live sessions, just for anybody to come to, just to get us thinking and talking more about how this way of living can be so much more helpful when we do it together and really are thoughtful about it. So I think over the next few months, I'm going to put together some things like that. And then we'll launch our 3-month groups again in a few months. So
wonderful. I mean, I will leave links to all of Christianne's website. But what's the main website where people can find you?
It is contemplativelight.com. Okay. So contemplativelight.com. You can also do a search for Christianne Squires Lighthouse. But Christianne Squires on Instagram is where I'm most active.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And definitely follow her on Instagram. Actually, it's lovely. I love following you there. So thank you so much. This has been the most delightful conversation, actually. And I'm leaving with a lot of hope in my heart and a lot of love. And so thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation. Such a gift to talk with you.